Embattled Harvard University President Claudine Gay resigned from her position as leader of the prestigious Ivy League school today, following weeks of campus turmoil that included plagiarism accusations and backlash over her anti-Semitism testimony. Gay penned her resignation in a letter to the Harvard community. The Crimson reported that her decision to step down marks the end of the shortest presidency in the university history. And she wrote, "It is with a heavy heart, but a deep love for Harvard, that I write to share that I will be stepping down as president. This is not a decision that I came to easily. It indeed has been difficult beyond words, because I've looked forward to working with so many of you to advance the commitment to academic excellence that has propelled this great university across centuries. But after consultation with members of the corporation, it has become clear that it is in the best interest of Harvard for me to resign so that our community can navigate this moment of extraordinary challenge with a focus on the institution rather than the individual." Gay's decision to resign comes amid congressional investigation into plagiarism allegations that have been made against her. In a letter sent to Harvard University, the Republican-led Education and Workforce Committee confirmed that it's looking into Gay's record over 24 years. Well, Nicole, I'm going to start with you. We're the Black women on this panel, and I think that it has been an interesting journey that from the day that she testified, and even before that, all eyes have been on her for a number of reasons. And for me, I just see it finally catching up with her on some other things that may have been underpinned. There's been an underpinning there that's now just coming into fruition with this particular moment.
Yeah, I mean, this is extremely unfortunate. I know that she had a great deal of support from professors and other academics, practitioners at Harvard. And yet, in spite of all of that, the status quo won. They literally targeted President Gay, not just from the moment of her testimony, but probably were dismissive and questioned even her being hired into that position, given the racist vitriol that she's been subjected to publicly since her testimony, but probably underlied people criticizing and questioning the hiring decision from the beginning. It's incredibly unfortunate. I think, in the chatter that I've experienced today on social media and amongst colleagues, often people in my position are outreached to for recommendations for people to apply, to recommend names for positions like these. And now it's going to, I think, offer a chilling effect on Black professionals, Black practitioners in all fields, who would recommend friends, recommend colleagues for positions like this, who may be subjected to literally the status quo coming in and trying to undermine authority, in addition to just delegitimizing these hires. So it's quite unfortunate. It's a stain on Harvard, it's a stain on academia, and it's a stain on the ability of Black professionals to ascend to the highest levels, given what we may experience, given what we may have to deal with in terms of being undermined publicly and also probably behind closed doors as well.
Right. And Nicole, I actually want to stay with you, because often what happens, and you touched upon it a little bit, is that once a Black person is in this position and then they're removed, well, the precedent becomes kind of sticky there in terms of, well, do we hire another one? And that's generally how it's looked at when we are dealing with African Americans in these high positions such as this one.
Such a challenge, right? I mean, she was the first Black woman president elected or hired to lead Harvard. There's such celebration when the announcement was made. And I mean, this is just such an unfortunate turn of events. And I think doesn't surprise many people who've seen this in other fields, seen this in lower profile organizations. And it's just a reminder of what people can experience if they do choose to take on positions like this, if they do choose to break those glass ceilings, break down those barriers. I mean, many people have succeeded, but it also comes with risk. I don't even want to think too much about the emotional turmoil that Professor Gay has probably experienced over the last many weeks. And I just hope that she's taking care of herself. I hope that her support network is embracing her and helping to take care of her, because I'm quite sure that it has been quite a journey for her. And it's unfortunate to see her resignation today. I know that she had a great deal of support, and she'll continue to need that support depending on where she goes next.
Yes, absolutely. And speaking of support, Dr. Walker, Harvard Corporation, I mean, unanimously, they supported her. But at this point, when we look at those who did testify in front of Congress, what was it, Michigan and UPenn, was it Michigan? Yeah, those particular presidents, none of them fared well. And when they answered that question, let's start there. But I did have a feeling that people were going to begin really looking into her, and they have, and now it's reached all the way up to Congress.
Yeah, so I had some thoughts on this as someone who's Black in higher education at a large, predominantly white institution. So let me start that, first of all, that as a former congressional staffer whose boss was a ranking member on the Education Committee, the idea the Education Committee would ever look into something like this is unprecedented. And I know we don't like to use that word, but it would never happen if this was someone who wasn't a Black woman. Let's be clear about it, at Harvard University. And I got to be honest with you, I am filled with what I describe as righteous anger this evening, which is reflected in many of the Black folks who work in higher education and that I've communicated with and also saw on social media. So this is a witch hunt from the very beginning. And I think this highlights a few things for Black people, whether they're in higher education or at other industries. And then, first of all, we've been told historically that, the goal is American exceptionalism. But no one told you that when you're Black and exceptional, that you have to deal with scorn and envy. She's the first Black person to ever be selected for president of Harvard University, and was 400 years. It is the most recognizable institution in the world. And there were accusations of those talking about DEI and affirmative action hire, where her credentials at Stanford and Harvard University are impeccable. But I think this is a warning sign for Black folks in our society who think that if you stay quiet, that they won't mind being your current position. And this is a clear indication that they're coming for all of us if your ideas and beliefs don't align with these kind of right-wing ideologues. The other thing I want to highlight is that, in my opinion, as an academic and also as a Black man, is that this idea of the United States and this idea of truth, in my opinion, that the truth that we're usually associated with, what's important, is dead in America. And let me tell you why. What's really happening right now is that we're losing the propaganda war. And so truth does not matter. What matters is who controls the agenda. We know Chris Rufo is the one who led this fight and telegraphed several weeks ago on Twitter that he wanted to have her fired from her position. So let me remind those who are watching again today that this is a propaganda war. Yes. And if you think that strictly telling the truth will be enough, they will eventually come for you also.
Yes, because the activists, if you will, that really brought this to the attention of everybody, as you said, they weren't higher up politicians. They were lower level people who got on Twitter and made a big deal about this. But I do want to ask you this, Dr. Walker, when you look back at her testimony, could she have done better?
Yeah, I think that having an issue with and so look, academics are very particular about and being very careful about language, particularly when you're in that. And I've prepped witnesses before for these congressional hearings. So I think the mistake that Dr. Gay and the other individuals may have made, if you want to offer as a critique, is that they were doing their job as academics, leaders of post-secondary institutions. But once again, that hearing was a propaganda, was part of an overall propaganda to put out on various platforms to highlight why these institutions aren't welcoming or et cetera. So while they went in and they were properly prepared, what I don't think they understood is that the members of Congress were looking for sound bites. And so once again, this continues this idea what I talk about, the difference between propaganda and truth. So I think if they were prepared and taught that when you give responses, be very clear and don't give these long-winded responses, because what happens is that's able to be chopped up and used later on, which it was, used against them on various platforms. And I think that the way they were prepared, didn't have them understand that this is really about sound bites and not really about what's happening at post-secondary institutions.
Dr. Ali, tell me why, or yes or no, did you see this coming?
Yes.
All right, and why?
Well, because she's a high-profile African-American woman at one of the most prestigious institutions, as Dr. Walker just laid out, in our country. They also saw her as a sacrificial lamb. You know, we have a double standard that exists inside of our country, especially in relationship to Black women. I mean, she had done everything right to move up the ladder to be able to lead this institution. And you know, I've also worked on Capitol Hill. I've worked for John Conyers when he was chairman of the Judiciary Committee, so I know how these things are going to play out. So one, folks did not do a good job in prepping her, you know, to make sure that she could navigate this. But we also got to understand, you know, that Republicans were literally chopping at the bits to be able to have this opportunity, as Dr. Walker laid out, to have a got you moment, if you will. Now, I also wrote about this earlier today, and I remember the words of Dr. King when he said, it's not the words of our enemies, but the silence of our friends. So when we have African-American women in these high-level positions, we understand that folks are going to come for them. So I also put some responsibility on our community. And when I say our community, I'm saying everyone who says that they stand for making sure that Black women are given every opportunity possible to also understand that there are folks who are going to come for us. So what are you going to do? What's the strategic plan when folks come for us to make sure that we are surrounding them, not only with love, but also with making sure that we're going to let you know that you come for our community, then we're going to make sure that we fight you tooth and nail to make sure that you don't achieve the goals that you want to, especially if they haven't done anything to the level of you trying to take away all that hard work that they did year after year after year. So we understand that this is a game that's going on, and that's why not only in this moment, but moving forward, we need to be very, not just careful, because I don't want folks to not say how they truly feel about something. But we understand the dynamics that were playing out there. Dr. Walker laid it out for us, brother, and I appreciate you so much, because there were forces that were much larger than the folks who were, you know, there in that moment. You know, you've got very wealthy people who are looking to show their power, to show that they can, no matter who you are and no matter what level you're at, that they can come for you, and not only come for you, but that they can get you. And if we don't fight back, if we don't push, and then make sure that we understand that they're not just after a one-hit type of thing. They are literally trying to deconstruct, you know, structures that are critical for us to be able to even get in the door and to compete. Here's the last point that I'll make.
Okay.
Why is it also a double standard? It's a double standard also because this system, Madam President, had been there for a very limited amount of time. She hadn't even had time yet to probably review all the policies that were out there in depth and be able to make the modifications that are necessary. Now, Dr. Walker works, you know, in higher academics, if you will. I've taught at a number of different universities. I understand how slow things move, and I understand all the various elements that you have to be able to go through to be able to make a policy change. So for them not to give her, she hadn't even been in office, I believe, 6 months, to be able to say, you know, that she needed to go and not even give her the opportunity to actually make those changes and to go through the process that's necessary tells me right away that you were not serious about seeing real change happen. But what you did is that you were looking for a sacrificial lamb.
Dr. Walker, let me go to you, especially because you are at a university. What do you think about the fact that she is going to go back to being a faculty member? And I guess just her existence from this point on, it cannot be an easy path to go from being the shortest serving president in the history of Harvard University to being a member of the faculty.
Yeah, it's going to be very difficult, and I hope her support system is there. And this is a very difficult transition. Listen, higher education happens frequently. Someone's a senior administrator, even a president of the university, a dean, a provost, department chair, et cetera, who's already tenured, who, you know, that appointment is no longer available, and they go back to teaching. It happens frequently. But this got international press. And this has consistently been in the news the last couple of years. And once again, we are talking about Harvard University. And so having the shortest tenure of any president at Harvard University in its history, and you being the only first Black person appointed to that position, this is it's going to be extremely difficult for her to deal with. And so, like I said, I've seen it in other, not only my current institution, but other institutions. But the last point I want to make is we talk about plagiarism and standards. I want those to take note that those individuals who are really concerned about these alleged plagiarism allegations are the same ones who believe that January 6 people who were involved in insurrection should not be held accountable for their actions. So the double standard in America is very clear and stark. And so once again, I remind you that if you stay silent, they will still come for you.
Very interesting point, Nicole. I wanted to say this to you. They're going to be looking for another president. They have an interim president right now. What are your thoughts about who they should select for all of this to make some kind of sense?
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure that they will go through the process of a hire. I'm sure that they'll include Black and Brown and other BIPOC candidates amongst their search. I would question even putting my hat in the ring, particularly if I were a Black woman or other candidates of color, given what President Gay has gone through and given the lack of institutional support, in spite of the rhetoric coming out of Harvard, in spite of the number of faculty and students who signed letters of support for President Gay, and yet and still that support wasn't able to outweigh the vitriol she experienced from so many others who were pressuring her resignation and her firing. So it's going to be an interesting process to see what Harvard goes through. People are going to be very challenged to follow in President Gay's footsteps and to face the scrutiny of forces that came for her. And, I think at the end of the day that it was a trap that she was set up for and succumbed to. And I think anyone else, particularly if they're outside of the status quo, if they're outside of what white elites view as appropriate candidates for that position, are going to be at risk of being targeted, of being overly scrutinized, and being vulnerable to that level of vitriol that President Gay experienced.
Dr. Ali, what you said earlier in terms of the propaganda machine being at work, some people would describe the plagiarism as very sloppy attribution. As we talked about, she had the support of staff, she had the support of faculty and students. She had the highest level of support from the corporation at Harvard University. So when we look at this, it seems to me that the politics and that punting back and forth, it is a serious game and it's not going away.
No, it's not going away. It's going to continue to escalate until we start to put checks and balances, in relationship to that type of stuff. By no means should we not do background checks when you're hiring someone. But for anybody who's ever been in higher education, whether as a student, grad student, a doctoral student, a professor, let me say it this way. If we want to actually go take a deep dive into what President Gay did, then there are a whole lot of folks who are running both academic institutions, nonprofit institutions, corporations who have written on the master or the PhD level that folks should be taking a look at that as well. Let's make sure that we are being equal in the way that we're approaching these things with everyone.
Yeah, I think there's going to be more to come on this, especially now that she's no longer president. It'll be interesting to see what she says when she is interviewed in terms of what was going on behind the scenes when all of this unfolded.
A new year for a new you. Curl Prep Natural Hair Solutions at curlprep.com is an amazing organic line for curls, locks, braids, twists, and even those wigs and extensions. Women, men, and children are loving this line. Look at this video and you be the judge. People line up to see this product in action at hair shows, and when they take a seat and try it, they don't believe it's their hair. Buy the products at curlprep.com. It works on all hair types. Use code ROLAND, that's ROLAND, lowercase letters, to get a 15% discount. Parents, remove the ouch. You will love this system because you can comb the product through your child's hair with your fingers. Seasoned saints are loving the product. It's all at curlprep.com. Use code ROLAND, lowercase letters, to get a 15% discount. You won't believe it's your hair.